Today on the Videomaker Podcast, Chris and I talk about how to become a full-time videographer. Videographer, filmmaker, whatever you want to call yourself. We talk today about kind of the three big ways to go to full-time. One is to become an entrepreneur, to start your own business. The second is to get a job, become someone else's employee. And the third is to become a freelancer, which we do talk about the nuance, kind of the difference between an entrepreneur and a freelancer as well up front. But if you do want to turn video into your full-time career, you should learn a lot in this episode, or at least we hope you learn a lot. As always, if you've been listening to the podcast and you enjoy it, we would love it if you hit the subscribe button or the heart button or the follow button or whatever it is in your personal podcast app, whether it's iTunes or Spotify or whatever, and have the podcast delivered straight to your mobile device every time we release one. Should be super convenient for you and also very helpful to us. Also, if you want to support the show, you can do so by subscribing to our email newsletter. It's the best way to support the show, and you can get it for free at videomaker.com/newsletter. We'll send you tutorials and reviews, buyer's guides, and video production news throughout the week. So hope you enjoy that. All right, all that stuff out of the way, let's get on with the show. Welcome to the Videomaker Podcast. I'm Mike Wilhelm, and with me, as always, across the table is Chris Monlux.
Hello.
And Chris, this is a momentous episode. Anyone who's listened to the last half a dozen episodes might know why. No audio changes.
Nope,
first time.
Exactly the same as the last one because we just got done.
Yeah. Anyone who's watching the videos back to back might notice that we're wearing the same clothes.
Yeah. I've just been wearing it for a week or 2 weeks, actually.
Yeah. So there you go. This is the control. Two episodes where the audio has not changed.
Yep.
Very rare occurrence for us.
Yeah.
But today we're talking about one of our favorite topics, which is basically like earning a living with video.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have talked about this from a handful of different angles in the past, but never from all three in one episode. And actually, we're going to talk a little bit about being an employee, I guess, getting a job here, which is new to us, new to the podcast. But maybe before we start, I'll just plug a couple of older episodes. If you're very much into this topic, we have a few episodes where we go into a few of these details in greater detail, which is, let's see, we recently, in episode number 78, talked all about making money on YouTube, if that's interesting to you. And in episode number 57, we have career advice for freelancers. But today we're going to talk about just generally, if your goal is to make a living and you don't really care how, you just want to use video and make a living out of it, we'll talk about the main reasons or the main ways you can do so.
Yeah, I think this is the, don't want to go to college, want to just do full-time video. Done with college, want to get a full-time job.
Yeah.
Or the guy that's like, I want to get a career in video because that's what I really like to do, and leaving whatever they did behind. This is just making it so you can live off of the video work that you make.
Yeah. And something I'll say about this, Chris, before we get started, it's not easy.
No.
There's not a ton of work. I mean, there is work, but this is not like becoming an accountant.
Yeah, you're not going to just be able to get a video job, although it is opening up, but you're not going to be able to go to any place and go, hey, I'm a video guy, you should hire me.
Yeah.
They're going to have to have an expressed need for that video, right?
Yes.
And this is, freelance or working directly with someone, regardless if you're billing them directly or they're paying you monthly or weekly or whatever it is. This is something that is a grind, and it's like rinse and repeat. I had delusions of grandeur when I was younger of, thinking that I was going to get to make my art all of the time. And as much as I find it very, very satisfying to create and continue to create and make better content than I ever had in the past, you have to put things to rest, and you can't just always make them great. And sometimes it's just a job. Mm-hmm. But the good thing is, if you also enjoy doing it, more likely than not, a lot of times it's not going to be just a job. It's going to be a way of life for you.
Also, I would say that anyone who's starting out their career is that, and this is with any line of work, not just video, but I experience this with video, where you have in your mind a reason why you're doing a thing. And then once you actually start doing it for a while, you realize that even if you still love it, it might not be for the same reason you thought, it was when you started. So for me, for example, this is with a lot of people, I enjoyed the process of telling stories, like making little stories and telling them with video, making movies basically, right? And that was what really drove my passion. And once I got into the industry, I actually went through college, did this, got into the industry, started working with video full time, I discovered that the thing that got me most excited was the technology of it and using the equipment to create images, less so than telling a story. And I think maybe that's because in reality, when you're a full-timer, you're often using video to tell someone else's story. So while there is some enjoyment that I got out of that and that a lot of people get out of it, it's just different than doing whatever you want.
Yeah.
So, as you go into working with video, I would say keep an open mind in that regard, that you may discover things along the way. You will likely discover things along the way that spark new passions and change your outlook on, what you actually want to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's face it, there are lots of specialties amongst the video production world of what you're going to be doing. You could be handling a camera, you could be sitting in a dark room, you could be writing and never touching a piece of equipment. There's just so many aspects of video production that it's not always that profile picture of you holding a camera, right? There's all sorts of aspects of it. And as you start doing those, these days, of course, we have such an easy path to the one person show of being able to do it all yourself. But that you're going to find parts of it that you like better than others. And I mean, I know when I was in college, the last thing I wanted to do was make local TV commercials because all I had ever thought of them as these cheesy things. And then I got a job doing it and I was like, oh, well, they don't have to be that. And then I started finding I actually really like the thought of the marketing of this. That's pretty interesting. And I also like working with customers. And I never thought that would be the thing that I would, come across that I enjoyed doing. And then of course the drive for the technology for me, I love keeping up with the stuff. And of course here now, I mean, I get to play with equipment for a living. So, there are and I never thought I'd be a journalist or, doing the kind of content that I make now when I first started, and I wouldn't do other projects if I could choose it. I like the kind of content and it's very fulfilling for me and what I do, but it's also like super rare and niche, but that I've heard that a million times, finding people that are like, yeah, I really got into production and I realized that I just like telling stories. I didn't want to touch a camera. I started writing and now I'm a media writer. So yeah, I'm writing for the idea of being used as on, being shot by a camera and all that kind of stuff, but you're not actually technically doing any of it. And that there's, all the stuff in between. I really dislike casting. That's a job in media. And you might actually get there through using a camera. It's really surprising the avenues you get. I mean, I know people that start out as gaffers that are DPs now, people, and they just wanted a job. There's a lot of that. That's just like you find your niche or your place that works. And in the creative endeavor that is videography and filmmaking, really there's just all sorts of different aspects. So if you're creative, which I think a lot of us are that are in this industry, likely you can find money where it might not just be sitting there, right? So that's the idea of like, entrepreneurship, the working on your own, finding that work. And that is, your wedding videographers. This is your independent corporate videographer, and usually those might be the same person, and it just the independent, the freelance videographer is going to find themselves doing a lot of different things. I mean, I've done live streams to weddings, to funerals, to, covering events, to making ads, to making educational video. I mean, it's just all of it is video, but the content you're making is drastically different and might be all over the place. I know people that, made an ad for someone that wanted a really expensive car to send to the manufacturer of that car so they could get that car. And they got paid a few grand to make them an ad just to get them to get this expensive car. What? Like, that's crazy. Why would anybody do that? Oh, well, this guy did, and he bought a few $100,000 car. That's how it goes. There's just, you'll be surprised the work you're doing. I mean, I found myself at a church that I had no other time would have been there shooting something that was really strange to me, but I got paid to do it. But it was, I would never experience that otherwise. It's amazing what the jobs can expose you to really opening your eyes to the needs of video in the community. And that's the best thing about right now, is there's never been a greater need for video ever, right? There's more video needed than can be made. I mean, I think we're really at a place now where if everybody could make great video, they would be making great video, but the technology, and of course, it just takes a lot more skill than people set out to get in making that. But if we had, I think every business could have a video professional making them content, and it could be beneficial, but it would take being creative with what kind of content they're making and for what purpose.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about two concepts which sound similar, but are different, which is entrepreneurship and freelancing.
Yes.
And you described entrepreneurship, and you could kind of say, well, isn't that freelancing? Like, if you're doing wedding videos, aren't you a freelancer? And I'm not sure that that's true. So let's draw let's just use one specific example here. So if you're an editor and you edit videos and people pay you to edit videos, and you work for directors who want you to edit their films or whatever, you're a freelancer. If you start a post-production house and you have a bunch of people editing for you, or people who are doing motion graphics, and you have to do things like pay people's salaries or acquire business and woo clients, then now you're into entrepreneurship territory.
Yeah.
And there is, that's like a clear example where maybe the entrepreneur in that case isn't actually doing video, knows a lot about it, but probably is not spending much time in After Effects.
But they're the one taking the risk for the entrepreneur is the one that's holding all the risks so that the rewards can be reaped by the people below.
Now there's another version of this, which is wedding videographer, who is kind of both in a sense, where, maybe they're a single person operation, and they're hired by individuals to do work. But a wedding videographer, and I think maybe the difference here is the production level, the amount of specialization that goes on here. A wedding videographer is, I believe, closer to an entrepreneur than a freelancer is. One, the wedding videographer owns all their equipment or rents their equipment. They usually don't come into a job where there's already equipment present.
Sure. There's a business model, all the rest. I think the biggest line is where you do the same thing all the time. If you are a wedding videographer and you have a business of doing wedding, and you're not like doing that along with doing some narrative stuff on the side, and well, I mean, you could do all that stuff, but like, if that's your thing you're doing, cool. Versus, I think like the true freelancers, like, I got a gig over here. Okay, I can do that. It's almost like a substitute teacher versus a teacher. In that, like, I could be doing a live stream this week. I could do another one next week, and of course, also the scale. So as soon as you get a few people around, what are you, a freelance trio? No, as soon as one other person's involved, you're a business. Well, the business can be one person too. So I think it's somewhat great where the overlapping is. You could call yourself a freelancer even in Hollywood, because you're not always doing Paramount Pictures. You're doing stuff for whoever, but you might be a Universal DP, and then you only work for them. Which one's a freelancer?
It probably comes down to, there's like a legal classification with starting a business versus being a independent contractor.
Yeah, it's probably the liability and your business license you have or what have you.
So let's talk about entrepreneurship specifically.
Yeah.
And a lot of this is appealing to a lot of people because entrepreneurship, building businesses, is a little bit more scalable than being a pure freelancer, in the sense that typically an entrepreneur tries not to be their own employee, right? Like, they're building something that can grow. Whereas a freelancer is limited to what they themselves can do.
Yeah, they're looking for work.
Yes, exactly. I need to monetize my time and my skills. Whereas an entrepreneur is trying to just generate value. So the main thing that with becoming an entrepreneur is like finding the business. Like, how do you get business in the first place.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people in the video space that start out their businesses as freelancers, and they grow to the point where they can no longer handle the work and they have to expand it before they know it, they have a business.
Yeah.
But to become that at that level, you just need someplace to start, like getting business to start with and then growing it.
Yeah. And the thing is it really depends on what scale you can start at. I mean, let's face it, if you could be an entrepreneur from day one, if you hire an editor and a shooter and you are just going and getting all the work yourself, yeah, it could be all that. And you just start at a greater scale than the guy that took less liability this equipment I have, I can build and buy new stuff and build this as I go. And eventually I'll need to grow into another person, or which I think is more of a sign of an entrepreneur, is being challenged by getting work that they can't do. Mm-hmm. So you're a wedding videographer and they're like, hey, I have this company that needs an animated logo. You're not like, oh man, I got to get on YouTube and figure out how to make an animated logo. I need to figure out how After Effects works. No, you're going, okay, I'm going to take a cut and I'm going to pay someone else to do it. And then I'm going to deliver it to them. I'm going to be a middleman, but it's all a business move. It's like how it is work, but just because you're not doing it doesn't mean it's not something you can get paid for.
Yeah. And while that work is being done, the entrepreneur is looking for more work.
Totally.
The next client.
Always moving on to the next. I mean, and let's face it, the freelancer also has to do that. The problem is the burden is just on them to do the work and find the work. And I could say doing those and then also adding in like billing and trying to get people to pay you and that kind of thing. That's a lot of stress for one person to take on. And that's why a lot of times businesses have those things segregated out, because it's kind of a hard thing to balance.
Yeah. Yep. So, we talked about the fact that, an entrepreneur might approach this from the perspective of getting the work and then finding someone else to do it or using templates or whatever.
Yeah.
Just a short story. I worked for a guy who had, I'm going to call it a part-time video business. Didn't know how to make video, but knew a lot of people and knew enough about video to hire the right people.
Yeah.
So people would come to him and say, I need whatever video. Can you help me? And he would go, yeah, I can. Because I know these other people. And so I'm going to hire a shooter to come out and shoot your event. And I'm going to pay that person. And then I'm going to take the delta between what you paid me and I paid him. And that's it.
Totally. As a, facilitation fee type of thing. It reminds me of my grandfather, who was, he had car dealerships that he owned. He wasn't very literate mechanical. He couldn't work on the car. Yeah. He could sell them, but he knew he needed a mechanic to fix the cars he'd buy so he could make more money on them. So he'd do that. And eventually, then I'll hire a salesman and I'll just be facilitating and making the ball, the world move as, influx and outflux of business happens. And I think that's the big thing about entrepreneurship, is just going, I'm always making sure the next steps being covered so we can deal with, and really it's all about managing your liability in general, is business in general, is, can I pay this person to do this work? Am I going to be able to make enough to make this project worthwhile, or what have you? Pricing, all those things. Those are things that people struggle with that are freelance. But if you have a business, likely you're thinking about the pricing maybe more than you're working on the actual production. But that's necessary, that management of the people, facilitating the space and the prices and just the full workflow. I mean, you need that. And a lot of business really quickly is outside of that one-man crew scale. As soon as you need more than that, even just someone to bring stuff with you, you have to, the pricing, everything changes and all the rest. And that's where I think the entrepreneur really shines, because they start seeing more opportunity instead of burden from that.
Yep. Exactly. And, I would say that an entrepreneur is going to be able to identify and recognize the laws of supply and demand, right?
Yeah.
Like, so some freelancers have this notion where, if they have work, they're not looking for other work, especially if they have more work coming, like the next project. An entrepreneur will make sure that everyone knows that they do this work, and they want a lot of people to come at them who they have to say no to. And as soon as you start saying no to people, you can raise your price, right? Because you just keep raising the price until the right amount of people are saying yes. And so an entrepreneur is going to look for ways to scale that as best they can. So they're playing the supply and demand, getting the price just right by making sure that there's enough demand for their business by, like I said, modulate that price, make sure that there's awareness out there, and then increasing the capacity of the business to accommodate the demand.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that scale, that perspective on that scale that is really hard to have as the freelancer, right? It's hard to see, well, I got enough work for the rest of the year. It's hard to see that, oh, maybe I shouldn't take some of that work so I can take less work and make more money.
Yeah.
That's a hard perspective to have when you're being fed and and that's the idea of like a regular job, right? I mean, that's why not everybody's an entrepreneur, because that kind of risk and foresight is stressful and can be lucrative, but also you can lose your hat. You can really, you're putting a lot of the, in that, I mean, for me, I always have like the lazy thought of things. It's like, if I was an entrepreneur, I'd just find enough people that'll do the work and there'll be enough money to be made. So I only have to work like an hour a day, but I'll facilitate it all. It'll be my risk to be holding, and, the company goes under, so do I. But, that'd be the goal. Or, and a lot of times for entrepreneurs, it's like getting it going enough so they can go do another one because they're addicted to that continual growth. And sometimes you get to a certain scale, and now it means diversification, not growth.
Yeah. Yep. So, we've talked about this 100 times. How do you get your first client? And you just do some work and you charge not very much money for it. And you do your best to get the word out that you do this type of thing, and you get demand to roll in. If you want to transition there from being a pure entrepreneur, you're doing the thing that you just described, and you're trying to free yourself from doing the mechanical work so that you can work on growing the organization and increasing the amount of customers that you can service.
Capacity.
Yep. But yeah, it all comes down to an entrepreneur has got to make sure that they can generate demand for the service that they offer.
Yep. And rinse and repeat. I mean, that's the other thing.
Yeah, of course.
Is like, the consistency of being able to have business relations is a really important thing, because new clients are hard to find, but repeat customers are easy to keep. So it's
hopefully not in the wedding industry.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Every wedding I've filmed, they've been divorced. So don't get me to film your wedding, because I'll screw you up pretty good.
Chris, very good at the repeat wedding business.
Yeah. Your second marriage, I'll do it well.
Yeah, buy one, get your second marriage free.
Yeah.
Half off.
Yeah, I did. And the funny thing is, I realized that like in hindsight, like I heard of, and my buddy was the last person and he got divorced. I was like, oh, really? I'm like the kiss of death. No one really knows this except for me exposing myself. But
so, that's a lot of work, and it's a lot of risk that you got to take on.
Yeah.
I mean, especially if you're doing the model where you get some work and then you hire someone to do the work so that you can find more work. Well, you are making a profit, but it's going to not be very much money in terms of total volume. So there's risk.
Yeah.
The safer mode is to get a job and have someone pay you a salary.
Yeah, that's I from the get-go, that's my like freelance experience got me to go, you know what? I don't want to be the guy to get the work here. I just want to be the guy to do the work.
Yeah.
I like doing the work, and I've been a manager. That's somewhat fun, but I really prefer executing and creating and that kind of thing. And it's different experience when you are, facilitating and managing instead.
Yeah. Yeah. So depending on the size of the city that you're in, this could be easier or harder, but I will say that there's just not a ton of video production jobs out there, on a per capita basis.
Especially ones that are like just video production.
Yeah.
I think you're going to find a lot of social media work if you are willing to be, bridging all that stuff. I think that's right now probably the easiest entry to getting a media job is doing social media for a company that's willing to pay someone a full-time wage to do that. And you're going to be able to create and have a place to do that. Probably going to find that anywhere.
Yeah.
But it might be only an entry-level job. I mean, we're not quite to the point where like a company's going to have a social media department. Mm-hmm. I think there definitely is. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I think some companies have that, but I think that scale is far less likely, you know,
Right.
or you're going to find it at other media companies, like being the social media guy at a TV station where everybody's a TV, a broadcast person.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in a small town like where we're at, there's not a ton of people who are doing this. There's folks working for the TV station. There's probably a few people, like you say, who are doing social media videos. There's some people working at the university. There's Videomaker, but we're not talking about hundreds of jobs.
We're talking about maybe a couple dozen at most.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
And I think that we have some unique stuff here. That's, the Videomaker. We're in Chico, but we could be anywhere, I guess. And so it's not like that would really be likely to find somewhere. But I think, the university is a very great place. In fact, I'd say if there's one sole, other than like a TV station, one sole employer that employs more video production jobs, I'd definitely say it's the university. The amount of jobs that are there for teaching and facilitating education and stuff is really there. And as it goes, this is very typical at a lot of universities. So it's a good place to look for jobs. However, when you work for a university, usually you need to be educated. So they're not, even if you went to the school of hard knocks and know what you're doing and are an amazing producer, they might not even accept you because they just, their bar of entry is what they graduate people with.
Yeah. If you're in a bigger city, you're more likely now to start finding full-on production companies or creative agencies.
Yes.
When we were doing Videomaker IRL, which, boy, it's been a long time since we did one of those.
Yeah.
I met a lot of people who classified themselves as corporate videographers.
Yep.
And basically they worked for production companies or ran production companies that make, I'm going to call them non-commercial videos for companies. Companies, big companies need videos for all kinds of things.
Yeah, it could be training. It could be to push an initiative. It can be to communicate anything, really. I mean, what's the point of video? Communicate.
Yeah, yeah. I expected going to these events that I'd meet a lot of independent filmmakers. Number one, most common person I talk to, corporate videographer or corporate filmmaker.
Yeah.
So I would look there. But the real question is, say you've identified a handful of employers or potential employers you want to work for. How do you know what they're even looking for? I've hired a number of people to do video in the past, and I can tell you the number one thing that is like, this is the screening level decision is demo reel. I'm gonna look at your demo reel for 10 seconds to decide if I want to take the next step, or not.
Yeah, and I would say, I used to think, because I remember making it and keeping my reel up in case I got some work, I could show someone my reel or whatever. And you know what? No one cares about anything you've done. They just care about what you did recently or what you can replicate. So if you're showing someone your work, show them your work, not I worked as a grip and some amazing DP filmed that and I'm not gonna be able to do that. But, if you did something that you think you're really proud of, that looks good and fulfills what they're looking for. So, if it's a corporate work, cool. What kind of things does that corporation do? What are they involved in?
Yeah.
If it's a food manufacturing place, cool. Show them all your shots of food, or how you can make the products look beautiful, or that kind of thing. What kind of video work you'd be doing to show them that. Now, given that's hard to not ask the hiring manager, but likely you can do something that's related to the business itself. But I can't say I've made it very deep on anybody's reel, even when it's really good. Because really the next question, if it's not answered on screen, which I think you should, which is your role in what you're actually seeing. Yeah. And for me, it was always hard because I'm like, can I just put all roles? I produced everything from start to finish, including the voiceover. But that was also, you say that and that was impressive. Oh, wow. You did voiceover work. Cool. You just don't know those things. And that's the kind of stuff that you can show off. So the thing is, either show your most recent work or make something specifically for them to wow. This is true for your resume, for your cover letter, or what have you. If it's an email, you're just trying to get someone's attention. customize it, make it unique to the thing that you're applying or being a part of. That'll make you stand out, because everything else is just like, oh yeah, here's my resume that I gave to every other company, which this, wasn't on the top of like, I started liking your brand in 1973, and that kind of thing. Like if someone applied here and was like, I have the first edition of Videomaker, that would be memorable. It would get them to stand out. Now, if that means anything to us in long term, I don't know, but that's the way you get to stand out. So then someone can look deeper, because that's really the thing, is the deeper dive is, can you do the work? Will I like you to do the work? Mm-hmm. Can they handle the workload? And usually it also comes down to compensation, right? What are you willing to get paid to do the work? And that's, you get willing to get paid what the work pays, then likely, especially in these days where, finding really good people to hire is more difficult. This is a great time to go and jump into a new career or a new category or what have you, because the entry point's lower than it used to be. You might be able to jump into a job that needed experience before, that you can jump in with no experience. Maybe even a job that needed a degree that you could get in without having a degree, because having someone that actually can do the job might be far more valuable than, what weird barriers that we put in front of some jobs.
You mentioned the wow factor, and I absolutely agree about that. And I've fallen, I want to say fallen for it like it's a trick, but it's worked on me in the past where if you're looking at resumes, there are certain things that will jump out at you. One is a Ivy League school, which, I mean, in terms of filmmaking, it's going to be like, do I see NYU on there? Do I see USC on there or whatever? But the other thing is notable projects that a person has worked on. So if someone sent me a resume or something and said, I worked on The Mandalorian, I would pause immediately, and go, okay, this person deserves a deeper look. Even if they were like, they don't have to say what they did. They could have been carrying donuts around. Yeah. But I will pause there and look at it, because again, maybe it's a trick. Maybe I'm falling for something here. But the wow factor is certainly something. But going back to the idea of the demo reel, you said make sure you can actually do the thing. You've done the thing in the video. That is absolutely true. And I have been, I've been the victim of this, where I think it's someone submitted a demo reel that was shot by someone, not them, because the work that they did not match anywhere near what their demo reel showed, and it was a big bummer. But yeah, the other thing I would say is if you can match your demo reel to the type of work you're willing to do. Actually, you mentioned this earlier, but that's great. So, for example, I've hired videographers to join Chris and I at a trade show, and I want to see in the demo reel some of the talking head interview footage that you've shot.
Yeah, because that's what I'm going to have you doing.
Yeah, exactly. So if you can match that as close as possible, that's great. It's just like when employers are hiring for any other job. I think we mentioned accounting earlier. If you're hiring an accountant, you want to look at someone's resume and see the job description or job title of accountant somewhere on there, right? Say, okay, well, you were an accountant.
Accountant, Mandalorian.
Yeah, yes, exactly. But if you can match your demo as closely to the job that you're applying for, then all good.
And I would say, as a hiring manager, if you called and say, hey, I want to be prepared to, make my submission, what kind of things do you want to see? I'm just asking. I mean, because for me, I'm not going to, honestly, I'm not going to probably, if I wanted to get a job at this point, it would be, I would show you something I've done. I'm probably not going to go out there and make something for you unless for some reason the job is just the end of the world. It's like the end game, right? But you could, what do you like? Oh, well, we do a lot of TV ads. Cool. I got a bunch of ads I can show you. Yeah. Or you'll be doing a lot of drone flights. Cool. Well, it won't be any importance to show you my GoPro footage. I'll show you my drone flights.
But what you don't want to do in that case is show the drone shot from The Mandalorian when your job was to carry coffee.
Yeah, exactly. Well, don't write the check if you can't cash it. That's number one.
That's like lying on your resume.
That's in general. And it's very, very common in our industry. The thing is fake it till you make it is a very Hollywood way. And, if you can get away with it long enough, now you have The Mandalorian on your resume, and all you did is get donuts. but you did it to make it so you could have that on your resume. But the thing is, the deep dive, you'd be disqualified. You know what I mean? So that's the thing, is like shallow look over, cool, they got my attention, but it's easy to get someone's attention outside by lifting your shirt up.
The demo reel needs to be legitimate. And if they say, well, what did you do on The Mandalorian? You got to be honest, say I was a production assistant, and that's fine. I mean, if it got the person to, as they're looking through 50 resumes and 50 demo reels, just pause and look one level deeper, you're already way ahead.
Well, I mean, I would say if you said I was a PA on Mandalorian, I'd be like, oh, well, cool. You've worked with some prima donnas or some people that have, so you've probably had to deal with people, or you've seen a real set to be on. Maybe that's valuable to the job. Those types of things that you don't really see as valuable might be, I'm trying to think of, it was when I first started doing videography, I had on my list that I was a welder, because I did that for a little bit. And that was something that Greg, the guy that hired me, he was like, oh, like you must know production. Like you understand the production line of getting something started from nothing to something, and you create stuff with that. I see that as valuable. Like that shows you're willing to put your hands into something. That's probably a hard job to do. Carrying something that's 50 pounds isn't going to be a big deal if you're used to being hot and sweaty next to a blowtorch or whatever.
Yeah.
And so those values they're there.
There's another level here, and we transition to like what actually makes an employer happy that they hired you. In addition to being able to do what you were hired to do well, there's the matter of like, are you a reliable person, and are you going to do the thing that you can do? Going back to the Mandalorian example, it's like if you were a PA on Mandalorian, unless you were fired, you were probably put under some heavy stress and asked to do a lot of work, and you had to perform, you had to be there on time.
Yeah.
Showing up on time, doing the thing that you said you were going to do is like, that's 80% of it. I
mean, I've experienced this, hiring someone with no experience, with a very shallow demo reel, but with a lot of hunger in their desire for things and a desire to get better and to learn, and versus someone that had done the job, but had some bad habits. I now would probably consider maybe the guy that had no experience over the guy that had the bad habits.
Yeah.
Just because if he was willing to learn and to be open, well, then he's going to be have more capacity than the other guy did. And I'm going to have to get him to stop doing certain things. And now given it's usually not that clear. And of course like I said, in this case, hiring is tight right now. Getting someone to do it might even be the difficulty. Just getting someone to show up might be step one. And that's where those opportunities lie, is, you never know who's not going to show up that next day. So if you're there, you might have the opportunity. And I'd say that, if you're available for work, those kinds of opportunities lead to better opportunities. And being available for opportunities communicates to people that you're willing to, like, that you're available, that, oh, cool, well, I'll think of you next time. And it's like, you only hear no a few times before you're like, oh, you're not even concerned for me. I'm not going to consider myself with you, with doing any kind of work. And the freelance can work into that job too, right? You get hired to expand the capabilities of a team for a day shoot because they needed more people there. And you were really great on set. And they're like, man, you were helpful. You want to come start working on Monday? Like, those kinds of opportunities, you never know they're there until you go for it. And to keep that hunger for whatever they're trying to have you make. I mean, I think it's helpful and healthy for yourself. If you're hungry for the work, you're probably going to be more entertained, more focused, more vigilant on the work you're doing than if you just let yourself, slip into being the daily old in and out. Eventually, the desire to do the work wanes.
Yeah, exactly. Going back to the example of hiring someone to shoot interviews, if you can deliver on the quality that you present in your demo reel, the thing that is that an employer really wants is like, can you do that all the time? And that what that does is it instills this level of trust where an employer can just say, I know so-and-so, I have a need for this. So-and-so does everything that I ask them to do as good as they say they can do it. So let's just bring them in to do this work.
Totally. And that trust is super valuable, because that is the growth possibilities in the relationship, right?
Yeah.
Is you might not know how to do this, but I trust that the industry enough that you will learn this, or you've shown your capability to grow or to take on more stress, or those kinds of things. Those types of things will lead to deeper. Now, given people use these things to manipulate, right?
Yes.
And, so people are going to try to take advantage of you and do as much as you can. So you want to be helpful and guarded, especially if you're, the media industry is definitely a place has plenty of charlatans and snake oil salesmen. But, if you're doing work and you're doing work for a day's wage, that's a worry you have at the pizza place down the street. Maybe not at McDonald's, but the place that isn't a chain, you might not know what that owner does. So, it's always somewhat of a risk to be an employer that way, or employee.
Yeah. Yep. And then the last thing to consider is what path are you on? So it's one thing to get a job doing video. It's another thing to consider what that job, what kind of trajectory that job puts you on.
Yeah.
This is something that I think a lot of people don't, young people specifically, don't think too much about. They accept a job because they want a full-time job, and here's one available. I'm going to take it. But every job that you're in, you develop certain skills along the way. And two jobs that might be kind of similar could send you in different trajectories, right?
Yep.
So if in one job you're doing all this work and you're very much doing a lot of field work and run and gun kind of stuff, and another one you're working in a studio, and otherwise it's the same, you're using cameras basically, or a camera operator, either of those is going to send you in different directions for your career.
Absolutely.
Because you're just developing new skills, and you're building out a resume that when someone goes and looks at your work, they go, okay, well, there's the run and gun guy. He does this all the time. Let's get him for this next thing. And you're stepping up, you're climbing this ladder in this run and gun, skill set.
Yeah. And I think that goes in industry too. So we had a guy that we first met through an Intel project that we did named Torrin, and he specializes in sports documentary and that kind of thing. And you know how much he's into sports? Very little. He just happened to be doing that kind of thing and doing more work in it, and then started to learn how to tell those stories the way they needed to. And so he started making that kind of content. And then he got known for that content. I have a good friend that's a documentary filmmaker. He wanted to be a narrative director and writer, but he got into documentary and then got known for documentary, got funding for documentary, and is like, oh, well, if I want to keep doing this, this can be the path.
Right.
And that's, you got to know you want to get into that path. And surely, especially when you're starting out, hopefully the end game is not the job you just got. That you're going to be happy for a short period of time. Life is long in years. So, if you're not going to be stoked doing that, or even the next step, good, keep it. Always great to look for a job when you've got a job. Definitely not, don't be like, I don't like this, and just bail and not have a job. You got to pay your bills. But it's one of those things to pay attention to when you're in those categories, because there's nothing sadder than seeing someone in a cool job that's just not passionate for it.
Yeah.
It's like, man, there's probably so many people that'd be so stoked to do that work, and you're griping about it. That's one, I would hate to work with people like that. Especially if you're choosing to surround yourself with the people that you're working with. Right. But that it's definitely one of those things where it can easily get that way if you just let yourself get in the rut. So challenge yourself to get better and to find those focuses. And really, in our industry, you do find niches. Even if you start as a Johnny on the spot and does everything, more than likely you're going to find something you're better at, or that people need more, and you're going to be able to do for them. You just never know where those specialties lie, and those opportunities can really they can be really fruitful when I've done some video work before, and I'm like, man, if I did this all the time, I'd be loaded, but I'd be really unhappy. Mm-hmm. There's like, oh, you could do work and be making a few grand a day, but man, you got to be doing that. That's for me for weddings. Weddings, you can make great money, but man, I just really don't enjoy going to weddings without a camera, let alone bringing one with me and having to capture it all and tell that story.
Not even allowed to drink when you're shooting video.
Oh, really? Just kidding. I didn't know that was a rule.
Yeah, well, that's why you have flasks, I guess. Right?
Yeah, well, I don't know. The last wedding I went to, the bartender, we had to serve our own drinks because he had a few too many while he was serving us. So,
nice.
I think it depends on the party.
Yeah. So maybe a good transition to freelancing. And again, we've got a whole episode just on freelancing, but A lot of overlap here between freelancing and entrepreneurship. But, I think if we were to describe what is the promised land for a freelancer, it's the thing that we talked about an entrepreneur not being that into, which is you coast from one gig to the next without having to look really for it.
Yeah, and you might not be the leader. I mean, let's face it, not everybody's a leader. Not everybody's born to be the president. A lot of people wouldn't want it, right? So the same thing with a lot of jobs. And so I think the freelance gig is also I find a lot of people that like to choose the people they work around. And in this industry, I think it's because it's a creative endeavor that is important, and so, it's harder to make those choices when you're taking projects for your team or what have you versus the next thing you're going to be doing. And, if you get known for doing something, eventually you could just do passion projects. I mean, let's face it, a lot of people get paid good money to do really specific things. So I think, like being an editor for reality TV, I bet you if you work on one that was somewhat successful, if you wanted for the rest of your life, you could sit in your edit suite and never work on anything other than just doing reality TV. The volume's there. There's lots of need for it. Mm-hmm. Surely if you worked on a production company that did it, they probably saw the money in it and also, are wanting to take on more projects and that kind of thing. So you could do that. But you could choose which ones you wanted to work on. Oh, no, I'm not into, I don't want to deal with some deadlines. Or maybe it's something that, shoots one day and then you have to edit for a week later or something like that, whatever it is, or just the type of work. And you can actually choose that. And so I think that's the nice thing about freelance. If you want to take some time off and you made enough money, well, you don't work. I definitely know a couple freelancers. They like it because they can go to the gym in the middle of the day. It's like I work for myself, but I work for enough to pay the bills and do my thing. Yeah. That's a happy life too, if that's what you want to do. So I think that's a nice thing. You do find you're still going to have to get into that entrepreneurship. You're still going to have to make sure you pay attention to how to be smart with your taxes. You're going to want to have to bill people. You're going to have to do all those things. So it's just more of finding a way to deal with those so that you don't have to. And, a freelancer could, instead of, hiring people to do things internally, they can hire more freelancers to do those other parts. Yeah. I know a team of freelancers that work as a production company, but they don't work under one masthead, and not every project goes to all of them. Sometimes, a graphic design job turns into a motion graphics video. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the guy that's writing jingles writes stuff for the commercial they're producing. Sometimes it's just for somebody else. So it's the freelance. I think it's just the freedom to go with whatever you want. And the nice thing I think too is sometimes freelance, you can make a grip load of money doing it. You can, it really can be so valuable that whatever you do, you can be really easygoing and live a somewhat retired life, just producing what you need as you go along. I definitely know a lot of people that are that way, that they work on a gig, and if it makes enough money for 6 months of living, that means they have 3 months to kick around, maybe do a pet project or something if they want to. Maybe they just go to Costa Rica or something, but then they go and work for another 3 months so they can work, have time off. It's just, the life of it. I think that there's a lot of type of work that's seasonal.
The thing that is really specific to freelancing, that this does come into play with entrepreneurship and a little bit to getting a job, but freelancers really rely on this, is networking, professional networking, and knowing the right people.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a DP and a director likes working with you, likely every time they get a gig, you get a gig too. Right. And if you meet enough people, so then you find a writer that is a good friend of yours, and they, you end up getting along, and you share a vision on things. The next time they get a gig, likely they'll give the nod to you. And the thing is the hiring, especially for productions, isn't as intense as like a normal job. It's like, can you do the job? Nope, get out of here. We're going to get somebody else in here. It's like, so everybody's replaceable really quick, but likely they're going to, you won't get a whole lot of time coming back over and over again to do interviews and stuff. It's like, you could do it. Okay, you have the job, and then you show up and you can't do the job. They won't let you back on the set.
Yeah.
It's that easy.
You think about when you ask how do you actually become a full-time freelancer, at least when I hear these types of questions, I'm imagining a student, right? Like someone very young who's trying to grow their career. But actually with freelancing, a lot of freelancers become freelancers after they have already been an employee somewhere.
Yep.
And so they already have a little bit of or maybe a vast professional network. They already have a body of work that they can show and say, this is what I do. And they can roll it into a freelancing career. If you want to be a successful freelancer, that's a great way to do it. It's really hard to build up a good freelancing career from nothing.
Yeah. And I don't think that all markets can handle every level of freelance, right? You might have to have way more specialty because your town doesn't have the demand for the 3 different types of content you make or what have you, that diversification, like our friend Devin, he's also a drone pilot. And so he gets jobs just flying drones because he's got his Part 107 and so he gets work for that. Other times he's gripping on something. Other times he's flying and producing it all himself. Yeah. And you just got to be willing to be at any level of the production too. It's like, hey, we need somebody. Cool. I can be an audio, I can be your recordist for the day. I know how to hold a boom pole and get levels right. You just, you end up being a lot more, I guess, more dexterous. You're going to be expressing your different aspects of your work more, unless you're being a specialty freelancer, like just an editor.
Right.
Which I have dreams that I don't think I'd be very happy if just editing, but I really enjoy editing. But when I have a lot of editing, then I'm like editing. So I'm glad I get time away from it. But if I could just have stuff like delivered to my inbox, like, hey, edit this into something, and then you have to just deliver that thing, that'd be pretty fun. But you have to get a lot of trust to get that kind of position.
Yeah, so being a freelance editor could be the best or the worst thing in the world. Here's why. The best case scenario is you're the editor for some famous Hollywood director, like Scorsese, been using the same editor for decades.
Yeah, and you do. I mean, that's the thing. You find a team that works, and then it's like you're on a team, but you're not really.
Yeah, and the beauty of editing is there's a lot of creativity that goes into editing. The story is largely driven by the edit. It's not like being a camera operator where you just point the camera at what the DP says to point it at. Lots of creativity in editing. So that in that case, it would be absolutely wonderful. On the lower end of things, it can be rough because now you are working on projects you don't care about, and you're competing with people overseas for remote work, like doing jobs that people are just looking for the cheapest possible route to an edit.
Yeah. It's like, are the people making a living on Fiverr and that kind of thing? I think there's a lot of money there, but you're going to be doing all sorts of things and likely for all sorts of different money, and it's going to be a hustle.
How many Fiverr editors do you think job out the work to other Fiverr editors?
All the smart ones.
Those people are entrepreneurs.
When you're looking for an editor, and you find one that does what you want them to do, you stop looking for an editor. I've been doing that recently with some audio editing, and I was like, this guy does it. I like the price. I'm not going to shop anymore. I'm not going to look around. But
the trick to look for these folks is if the person is clearly an American, well put together, and does way more work than they should have the capacity for, they must be jobbing it out.
Yeah, they're just trying to make money from it. Well, my camera died about 5 minutes ago, so it's been just on your face here for the last 5 minutes or so.
The consequences of recording 2 podcasts in a row.
Yep, exactly.
You got to put a still shot of you, doing something silly. Yeah. Okay, well, it's a good spot to stop. It's the last of the topics anyways, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. Big thanks to everyone for listening. As always, if you enjoyed the podcast, we would love it if you went to iTunes, actually. Even if you're not an iTunes user, go to iTunes, leave us a 5-star review, and write up a written review. We love reading those things, and it's actually a big help for the podcast. It helps Apple to tell more people about it, which is obviously good for us. So please go and do that if you enjoy the show. So for Chris Monlux and everyone here at Videomaker, I'm Mike Wilhelm, and you've been listening to the Videomaker Podcast. We'll catch you next time.